So yeah, even if your track is a work of genius, it won't get recognized unless it's presented in a manner that people can understand. I'm not asking people to dumb down their music, because I think having musically complex stuff out there is really good, but I just want to draw a kind of, basically a comparison between good complexity and bad complexity. So yeah, basically an artist on our label, Andrew Bayer, is a world-class mix engineer, and he's an amazing producer, and he's just put out his first artist album called It's Artificial, which I highly recommend you all go and check out. And basically it's just an exploration into his sound and the sorts of things that he can do, and everything that he writes is quite experimental. So I'm going to play you a track of his now, which is kind of this wobbly, I don't even know what you're going to call it, but here we go. So what I want to get at here is like, I can't even begin to imagine what this project looks like, or the kind of things that he's got going on in there. Probably, probably pass out if I even saw it, but like, he's still only got maybe like a couple of stems going on. This is the kind of thing I'm trying to get at. He's got his drum track, he's got his crazy little wobbly, crazy accordion thing going on, and that's about it. You know what I mean? So in a sense, in one sense, it's a very, very complex track, but as far as the actual way that he's constructed it and the way that the parts are all flowing together, it's actually very, very simple. So the next thing I'm going to play is an example of bad complexity. I thought if you're going to give an example of something bad in a track, the best thing to do is use your own music and not like rag somebody out. So I'm going to play you the very, very first take of a remix that I did recently. I should just add, whenever I do any kind of remix, I usually go through 7 to 10 versions of it, and I'm pulling my hair out over it and just freaking out over it for about a month. Usually when I actually have the finished product, I can't even bring myself to listen to it or play it in a club for like a week or 2 weeks after I've finished it, because I'm that obsessive about it nowadays. But yeah, here we go. So we've got like a drum track going on. Got a bit of a melody going on. For me, in this version, everything, all of the different elements, the kind of different things that are going on are all they're all occupying the same sound space. They're all basically kind of almost competing with each other a little bit for kind of clarity, basically. And so you end up with this thing where you're not really sure what you should be focusing on. So after many, many different revisions, basically I got to the point where I made the bass line stem more defined and more clear, and then made everything else kind of follow around that. So it's quite different the way it turned out. I have the same amount of stuff going on as I did before, but now some things know that they're the boss and that they are taking the focus of this track, and other things know when to sit back and follow, basically. So yeah, this is what I'm talking about. There's just less things to kind of listen to at the same time. So that's something I sort of want to impart on people, is to try and make that kind of dimension of your track quite simple, and then still have that complexity going in the form of parts that basically supplement and support other parts. So yeah. Okay, so back to this project here. First thing we're going to do is bring in just a new stem. Synth I'd really like to show you all, perhaps some of you are already using it already, is Ace by Urs Heckman, aka Uhe. If you're familiar with the famous Zebra synth, this is basically sort of an evolution of his work on that, and it's quite crazy. So it's got a very clean sound. You know, you can do some cool stuff with it. Not going to play around with the synth too much, as much fun as it is. So yeah, I'll just, for starters, show you the way I would basically just throw in a new element. I like playing with things, having a bit of a tactile approach. Usually I have some kind of MIDI keyboard, but in the absence of that, I'm just going to use my computer keyboard. Okay, my timing leaves a little bit to be desired. Luckily, Ableton has a function which can undo the damage that I just did. So what I've just done there is just gone to a new MIDI track, placed this Ace synth on there. For those who use Ableton, you'll know that you can just play on your keyboard, and it responds like a normal keyboard. I've hit record and then just played in what I want, and it's just saved that down onto there. So I'm going to select the closest thing that I had to a slightly in time riff there. Going to press Command J to consolidate it, which gives me this lovely little thing, which I can then loop. Do away with everything else that I just put in. Clicking the loop function in the clip properties. So I'm going to right click here and do some quantize settings and get this basically to fix up my bad timing. Just going to find the best little bit from what I just made there. There, that wasn't so hard, was it? So yeah, once again, I'm approaching everything in a very simple way for now, because I think when you're at least putting the building blocks of a track together, it should be quite simple in its approach. I'm going to put a filter on there because I'm not that big a fan of the high frequencies of this instrument. Do it in here. So I've got this little thing going on here. I'm going to put a compressor on this really quick. I've got my kick drum track here. Simple sidechain compression. You probably see this quite a bit. In Ableton, I click sidechain, select kick as my sidechain track, which now means that this channel here will jump out of the way every time that kick plays. That little orange bar down there is an indicator of just how much it's jumping. So I'll just play you the difference there. Basically adds a bit of movement. Increasing the ratio will up how much that jumps. So we've got this little kind of muted little sub bass riff going. So if I just go back here for 1 second, fusing multiple parts together into the one stem. So what I'm going to do here is take this line that I've just made and just duplicate it, just a Command D. I'm going to Command G to turn them into a group. You can also do that by right-clicking and just clicking group if you have 2 tracks, for example. It's in there somewhere, group tracks, just like that. I'm going to take this second copy and make it into something basically with high frequencies rather than low frequencies, just to kind of layer two sounds together to give you an example of how that works. I'm going to put a -12 pitch on that to bring it down by 1 octave. We've got a bit more of a... We've got definitely the next stem. That's definitely the next stem, because without it... So, not content with just layering those two together, I'm going to kick it up a notch. Bam. Just get that in there. Okay, so now I'm going to add basically a track that is a completely different style of thing altogether, a different category of sound, but still adhering to that same stem. So it's going to bring more to the overall musical feel of the track without it actually taking up too much more of the sound space, which is one of the things that I find very, very, very important in any kind of house music. So I'm really stabbing in the dark now, but let's just browse some presets and see what we can find. You know what? I'll go keys. That'll do for now. I'm going to do a simple, I think what you call it is a pentatonic scale chord. Ooh, my classical training is going out the window. So, I'm using the same rhythmic pattern from these other two, and basically just turning it into like a chordal sequence rather than a bass line. So this whole stem I'm going to add a bit of movement to those chord lines by putting a bit of a low frequency oscillator on there on the filter. Maybe a bit of Ableton chorus, just to wash things out a little bit, just to give you an example of that effect. It's that as opposed to that. The chorus is exactly as it sounds. It basically makes it sound like there's a few versions of it playing. So let's go back to what we had. Now, I can make this part very, very subtle if I want to. In a sense, I could turn it down so much, that part, that people would never even really notice that it was there by itself unless I, drew attention to it. So that's one way in that you can keep things very simple and still add so much into your project, Working in the Above and Beyond studio, I've got to have a look at some of the projects they've done for their, for their album release, and some of them are 100 tracks in length, in breadth, I suppose is the way you put it. And yet there's still only a few stems going on. So, yeah. Using effects sparingly at first. I actually read a great book by Rick Snowman, Dance Music Manual, which is basically a big sort of foray into all the different aspects of music productions. And he actually suggests that you don't even use EQ for the majority of using your for the majority of writing your track, and I would actually agree with that to an extent. One of the biggest things that complicates the sound of your project in the sound space, at least at the outset, is using too many effects. So if you keep it quite simple towards the start,